The media is mentioning as almost a footnote that Macron's government is looking like it collapsed within days. And in many ways, that's not that surprising. He's had a very good run. He was initially elected because he offered an alternative to the right. So there was a compromise candidate in the runoff. People would rather him than the alternative. And he's played that game. And each time he's got in on that game. And each time he's got a slimmer and slimmer win. And last time really had to combine pretty much the whole of politics behind him. Yet he's never been deeply popular. And a lot of his policies have been deeply unpopular. This titan of the modern European state is not really as sure-footed as he might appear. And the clock has been ticking on Macron. Whilst he's a smart political player and he knows how to play the sides against each other, and with French electoral system that's been great for him, all political careers end in failure. And his failure has always been certain to happen at some point. But what the media's not really covering is that Macron's not the story. The story is that the entire French Republic is at severe risk of collapse. France is toast. From 2008 to 2010, financial crisis, every country had a rocky path. And most countries borrowed or spent money. France doubled their debt to GDP ratio. But they didn't follow a policy of austerity like Britain did. Indeed, they doubled it again over the next 8 years. And then along comes COVID, and like everybody else, they spent like money was no object to prevent the pandemic, contain. You could say that's reasonable. The problem is what no one's really honest about in politics is that we spent an immense amount of money during that COVID pandemic, and then we've had near zero growth. Pretty much every country in Europe has had negligible growth. Productivity isn't rising. GDP isn't rising. Yet at the same time, we're taking on more spending left, right, centre. And France has been the champion of this game. France should be a warning to other European countries. Profligate spending to solve a problem is acceptable. If your house is on fire, you spend money you don't have, you borrow it to put the fire out. But when you've put the fire out, you don't go on holiday for a couple of years and you contain that debt. But politicians always work on 4-year or 5-year cycles, and they don't really care about the consequences of 10 years, so they spend, spend, spend. Well, at some point the chickens come home to roost. And now interest rates have jumped. These huge debts carry huge costs just to pay the interest. And surely Britain doesn't look too healthy either on that front. Thank you, Boris, and Keir, and Rachel from accounts, and Rishi, remember him? Last year, France borrowed $170 billion to cover their debt repayments. Well, this year they're going to have to borrow more. But when the money you borrow to pay your extra cost of debt repayment is greater than the growth of your economy, you're getting squeezed tighter and tighter. And France, along with many of its neighbours, has one major problem in trying to address this challenge. They don't control their currency. The Americans control the dollar, and the dollar is the international currency of choice. The British have the pound, which is a respected currency, and they can control its supply and they can play with its value to some degree. France can't. For France to change the value of its currency, it needs to persuade the Germans that they want to make their products more expensive. And whilst the Germans bankroll much of the European project, will they really damage their own economy for it? I don't think so. So France is staring down the barrel of either swerving cuts in spending or crashing out of the euro. Failure to do either of these will lead to a French default, and this will lead to the evisceration of the French insurance market, which will only increase the problem. So France is a lot worse off than looking forward to losing Macron.